of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, included in our packets, at least by email this afternoon, was last year's legislative recommendations, which they're still in the throes of many of those from what I know. And if staff has any statement to make on the progress of some of these, I know some of these were probably dispatched with, and I think you may have reported there was really no movement on prevailing wage, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Sean?
No movement in the direction we were
hoping for.
Right. There was almost movement in the special session, and ultimately, but yeah, not kind of on the threshold issue that we've highlighted for a couple of years. So,
well, this is one of those strange years where COVID gets in the way of almost everything. Most of us are behind in doing anything we wanted to do, including the State House, with their preoccupations. So I guess we can't blame it on anybody at this stage. But given that, I appreciate what was included in the packet. I wanted to get it on the agenda. I think it's a bit early for us to land anywhere on this. Perhaps my colleagues have a different point of view. Obviously, we're not setting anything in stone tonight. Jim, do you have anything? Dave, do you have anything to speak to this at this moment?
To the recommendations that we gave to the legislative?
Well, primarily, we're tasked with at least reviewing upcoming ones, paring it down, and this is early yet. Early yet. So this gets it on the agenda. Clearly, I didn't expect to be, landing anywhere on the whole topic, but it's on the agenda now, where it can stay until we cobble together a few things. And this way, staff's advised as well. We certainly need their input. Do my colleagues more or less agree substantively with just sort of getting it here and talking about it later?
Sure.
I agree that I'd like to hear first from staff, not tonight, first from staff in the process of what they'd like, and then we can call that down and add to our own information, because we're kind of the bridge between the politics and the government service, and staff is clearly government service, legislators are clearly politics, and we can be the in-between. So I'd like to hear what staff has to say at a subsequent meeting, and then we can formulate something. Is that all right, Tim?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And as I recall, we generally we have an early session coming up next year. We generally meet with them in January.
Yeah, so it's what they refer to as the longer session. And yeah, maybe I could just give a little kind of brief overview and context of where we are and the potential timeline, which again is up to you how we'd like to proceed. Working back, we did get the feedback in prior years from the legislators that they like to have, and particularly in the long session, where you can introduce any bill. The rule in the short session is supposed to be bills that are budget related. That gets kind of stretched to be anything that has any fiscal note at all kind of counts as budget related. And so you sort of see a lot of the same stuff in the short session. But in the longer session, the feedback we got from some of the legislators was the sooner we can get the information to them in advance of the session actually opening, meaning, even it's supposed to start the first week in January. And that if we can they only have a limited window when they can file the bills. So if we could have at least conveyed to them our priorities really by the end of the year, in a perfect world, by the end of December, that's the best for them in their process. So we kind of just looked at the calendar and worked back and working, I know, with Tim and Rob, and just sort of said, well, if we targeted the meeting where we invite all the legislators kind of at the round table, again, in normal years, I hope we can still do that with capacity and everything, but that meeting we would kind of target. We have a regular council meeting it's the earliest it can be, right? December 8th is the second Tuesday. We could potentially do that, a special meeting on December 15th, the following Tuesday, because people probably don't want to do Christmas week, but
right.
We could.
We don't.
So if we were kind of looking at December 15th as a target, bring the legislators, kind of nice for a special meeting anyway, because that conversation can kind of go on for a little while sometimes. We we thought that we would introduce it. I know it's referred here to planning, such that the first draft kind of could be considered and ready for approval at a November council meeting, such that we could send it to the legislators in advance, or maybe, maybe that meeting the first week in December is when we actually adopt it. And then we send it to them and they have a week to see it before they're invited into the chamber. So that's why it's kind of here now, such that maybe November is really the month to finalize it.
Right, absolutely.
And so, yeah, again, I don't think we have to do anything tonight, but I do think some of the discussions we've talked about are last year, some of the feedback we got was it got a little longer. It is 15 topics. I know we have police accountability. That's something I'd like to, and I can touch on now or at a later time. And certainly Chief Drive is anxious to talk about that as some ideas and tweaks he has there to that bill. But I would say, it may be advantageous to have a priority list of 3 or 5 and say, this is what Cheshire really wants. Go try to get it, versus maybe giving the legislators, 15 to 20. Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
It's sort of a strategy question maybe, but that's kind of.
Well, I think we had things on this list that were added at the end, but we also had things that came from staff. Number 4, for example, tax exemption on manufacturing machinery. That obviously was constituent based, coming to your office more than likely, right, Sean?
Yeah, and that one actually predates me. That one's been on there, to your point, for 3 years, I think now.
Right. So, I mean, I think we sort of need maybe some infill on that, just to know if some of these things seem worthwhile. Again, maybe post-election is when we're obviously going to meet post-election, but we should probably slate this for early November, where we actually revisit this so staff can be up to speed for us at that meeting, correct? And then anything else we think we need to include in the topics we could share with you, I guess. I don't know if we should probably have the chief to that meeting. What do you think, Sean?
He and I talked about that this evening. Again, his specific, and certainly, the answer.
He can do it in a report. I mean, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, he has to sort of. They understand that better than I certainly do. I mean, what really is the sticking issue there? Yeah, because I know it's a problem. It's obviously a problem.
Well, and I think there's parts of that bill that got a lot of attention. Certainly the qualified immunity, and I think there's still a level of confusion over exactly what has changed and what will change there. But there are specific points that maybe are getting a little less attention, like the use of force language, that the chief can explain a lot better than I, but is
right.
problematic for a lot of reasons, and is the concern, of course, is leading to officer hesitation, and
liability, and not doing what they think they should do or could do.
Right, and so I think there are some common sense, and again, Cheshire is far from the only town that'll be discussing
absolutely
this and I know that the Chiefs Association and a lot of other players will be involved, but I think that's definitely something that wasn't on last year's list clearly, and that I think deserves to be put on this list. And certainly I could have Neil prepare a report, but he would definitely like, and I think it would, if the council agreed, I think it would be good to have him available for the meeting when the legislators are there to hear directly, and they can ask some questions, because
I think that's perfect.
He's very tuned into it, and he's very up to speed on the impact, and I think that opportunity really wasn't there as this moved so quickly through the legislature.
Now, from that perspective of do you feel we need to have the chief at the planning meeting, or he can just more or less prepare for us sort of an outline of what he's most concerned about as part of this legislative package?
Well, we could certainly start with, I could start with a brief memo from him on the highlights as he sees them, distribute that even via email. And if we felt that you wanted to ask more questions in person, we could do that. And if otherwise the council meeting was better with the full council, they're both.
Yeah, I would think so. I think if we can just get the outline of it, I think that's sufficient. And then obviously he at the full meeting is perfect. Okay. Jim, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry. Going back to the comment, Sean, early on, as far as going to the legislators with like 3 to 5 items. I understand how that might sound like a good way to go in terms of keeping them focused on 3 to 5 things. But then again, over the course of a session, there's an awful lot of areas that they may cover, and I sort of would hate for them to sort of not be aware of some of our concerns when something comes up that we're interested in, just because we didn't include it on that list, just because we wanted to make it a little shorter.
Sure, sure. And again, yeah, fair feedback for sure. I know it's just something that we had heard, and also maybe it speaks to prioritizing too. I don't know if there's certain ones that the council
Well,
feels are
I think there
higher.
are some things that
Maybe we can
maybe they have broader reach to the community, within the community, and maybe the focus on those things is maybe a more meaningful approach. The list has gotten rather large, and Jim, we're not just speaking to the 2 or 3 things you added. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
we're
Yeah.
talking 15. We're talking 15 items. It's probably been as many as 8 in the past. I think it's gotten a little heavy. But we had here, number 8's a classic example of something that made sense for Cheshire. Transfer the bus depot property to the from state to the town. I mean, that's a classic. That made a lot of sense. Why shouldn't it be there? But at any rate, we've got time on this, but not much time because the weeks fly by.
I'd like to see us approach it where we talk about the items in 2 different types of categories: unique to Cheshire, like the bus depot, and keep that to 3 to 5 items, because you're not going to get a legislator that's going to put in 12 bills and expect 12 to pass, because that ain't going to happen. But I think there are other items, like Jim said, that are going to come up, such as a prevailing wage and some other items, where we're trying to weigh in on what's best for their constituents that we understand through our being elected officials in Cheshire. So I think there's 2 different things. There's bills that affect everybody, and then there's bills that affect just us. And I'd like to, maybe we can break it down that way.
Sure. I think that from our perspective, that would work. We could kind of organize in that way. Might
Yeah.
be helpful for the conversation.
See, these 3 items are just Cheshire, like the land up north and the bus depot and a couple of others, although the land up north may be buttoned up now. I don't know what's going on with the bus
that
depot.
one I think we could take off, at least that specific statement there. We could always use more assistance, whatever assistance means, but effectively that conditional conveyance happened. So
yeah,
I think that one from a priority standpoint could come off. The bus depot one we don't have, and that would be great if we could get that.
Yeah. Good. All right. And then Tim, you'll call a meeting for next month so that we can get this.
Yeah. And I know we can't figure that right now on the fly, but I think if it could be the 1st or 2nd week of November, that's appropriate. Does that give us no, that's when we have to get the.
No, the first week we have our regular meetings November 10th.
Right.
November 3rd is the Tuesday is election day. So the rest of that week, is certainly a possibility. And then again, it also doesn't have to happen the night of the council meeting, or it could happen. We could have a brief meeting before whatever you want to do. But
if we can fit it in, I think that's a way to go, because the other item on this agenda will be for the full council anyway.
Correct.
At that point. Okay. So why don't we just plan then for the night of the council meeting? And David, I know we have budget that night, but maybe budget isn't a big deal. Maybe it's a 10.
Maybe not.
Maybe
we could do this beforehand. It's the same people.
Exactly. So if we could just, maybe one's 10 minutes, one's 20. I don't really know.
Well, we'd want to see a draft well before, and so that
Absolutely.
maybe we can give our opinions to the draft.
I don't know we need to meet. I don't know that we can meet before then. When you get right. If we had to, we could meet after the election. We could do a Wednesday or Thursday after the election.
Yeah. All right.
Let's just see what is dictated by what staff can come up with and what we can come up with for our list.
Sounds like
we'll settle that later. Okay. If we're ready to move on, let's the discussion of the RFP submission services. For this portion of the meeting, I would like to go into an executive session. So I'm asking for motion to go to include Arnett Talbot and Town Manager Sean Kimball, and the rest of us here.
For the purposes of contract.
For the purposes of contract discussions.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Sure.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you, Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we will go into
And Mr.
session.
Chairman, we're going to come out of executive session with a potential